Hello everyone, welcome to Campsite Handmade Creations and another tutorial. Today we're going to learn how to crochet the granny ripple stitch. So as always, I don't like to dawdle, so let's get started. How's everybody doing today? I hope everyone is having an awesome day today. Let's start with our tools here. We're going to be using a 5mm hook and 3 different types of yarn, or should I say 3 colors. This is a medium 4 category 4 yarn. It normally asks for a 5.5mm hook, but we're going to use our 5mm hook today. It's my favorite hook size. We're going to start off with this pink here, and we're going to chain a multiple of 24. So I'm going to go ahead and chain 48, and then I'm going to add 3 additional chains, which will give you 51. This granny square only uses 1 stitch, and that is a double crochet stitch. So I'm going to continue making my chains, and I will be back. Okay, so I have my 48 chains here. I'm going to add my 3 additional chains, and we can begin. So your first stitch that's on your hook, that loop there, does not count as a double crochet. You want to skip 5 stitches, and in your sixth stitch, you're going to make 3 double crochets. That's 2 and 3. If you are new to my channel and you don't yet know how to double crochet, I do have a tutorial to learn all the basic stitches. So now we're going to skip 2 stitches here, and then in the next stitch, the third stitch, we will do 3 more double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. There's no chaining in between these stitches. Go ahead and skip another 2 stitches and make another cluster of 3 double crochets. This is the granny cluster. So your granny cluster will have 3 double crochets. This is 2, and this is 3. So now we're getting close to the point where we want to begin our valley, our peak. I'm going to skip another 2 and make 3 more double crochets. There's 1. 2. And 3. It can be a bit tricky. Your yarn will twist around just a little bit, but that's just it in the beginning, this first row. So now that we have our 4 cluster double crochets here, our 4 3 cluster double crochets, now we're going to make our peak. So you want to chain 2, and in that same space where you have your those first 3 double crochets, you're going to put another 3 double crochets. This is going to give you your peak of your stitch. This is the peak of the ripple stitch. This is the final double crochet. So now we have our peak. And as you go on, it's going to begin to slant a little bit. That's exactly what you want. So we're going to keep going across. You're going to skip another 2 chains and then double crochet in that third chain with 3 double crochets. Put 3 double crochets in that third stitch. So skip 2 and then put 3 double crochets in the third stitch. So now let's put 3 double crochets into this stitch right here. This is 1, that's 2, and your final double crochet all in that 1 stitch. Now we're going to do this again and skip another 2 stitches and put 3 double crochets into the 3rd stitch. Skip 2 and put a double crochet into the 3rd stitch. That's 1, 2, and 3. Now we're going to step in. We're making our way to the valley portion of this project. Now we're going to skip another 2 and make 3 more double crochets into that stitch there. Okay. So now we're at the point where we want to do our valley. We've already done the peak and now we're doing our valley. As you can see, if you look at it, you'll see 3 double crochet clusters and then an extra one right on the side, and then going down the side is another 3 plus the extra. So now we're going into our valley. So we're going to skip 5 chains and then go right into the 6th chain with a with 3 double crochets. So there's 1, 2, and 3. And now we have our valley because we skipped those 5 chains. So now proceed on and skip another 2 and make 3 double crochets. This is 2. And 1 more double crochet into that cluster there. That's 3. So now, as you can see, we have the peaks and valleys. It's going in kind of a wave kind of stitch. It'll get there as you go on. As you build up, it'll get a little more noticeable. So now we're going to go ahead and skip another 2 stitches and add another cluster, a granny cluster of 3 double crochets. So skip 2 and in the 3rd stitch, make your 3 double crochets. Continue on and skip another 2 chains and make 3 more double crochets. And the last one in this cluster. So this is what we have now. We have our peaks and valleys going up and down. We've made our 4th double crochet. If you look at it, you can see there's 3 clusters and then half of a cluster. And then on the next side is half of a cluster and then 3 clusters. So you see how that's working out. It's working out perfect. So let's keep moving on. Now we're going back into another peak. So to go back into the other peak, go ahead and chain 2 and add another 3 double crochets to this same stitch here, because now we're making another peak. So we need to add an additional 3 double crochets to that stitch. So now this is the last double crochet for that peak. When you're done making these double crochets, you're going to go right back into your clusters. As you can see, there is your peak. So we have the peak, and then we have a valley, and then another peak. So now once you've done that peak there, you're going to skip another 2 double crochet, 2 chains, and do another cluster of 3 double crochets. So skip 2, and in the 3rd stitch, make your 3 clusters, your 3 double crochets. There's 1 and 2 and 3. So now we're just going to keep making our way over to the end, skip another 2 stitches, and in the third one, make a cluster. There's 1, this is 2, and 3. So now you're going to skip another 2 stitches, and in that last stitch, you'll make a double crochet. I'm sorry, it's 1 stitch and then double crochet. Skip 1, double crochet. And that's the first row of our granny stitch, our granny ripple stitch. So now we're going to go ahead and change colors. I do have a reel on how to change colors, but I'm going to show you in this section here when I'm doing it. I'm going to go ahead and switch to the yellow. So while you have your hook here, you want to pull up a loop high enough that you feel safe and go ahead and put your hook into the first 2 stitches in the front of that loop, and grab your other color, put your yarn over like you normally would, go ahead and yarn over and pull through that loop there where you have your hook, and now you have a new loop, and go ahead and pull out that pink yarn and just chain 3, and that's how you change out colors. So now after we've chained 3, we're going to go ahead and turn our work. So we're going to miss this first section here, this very first hole right here where we put our double crochet. We're going to skip that stitch there and just immediately go over to the next section between those clusters and make 3 double crochet. So now you're just going in between these clusters to add your yellow yarn. So this is my second double crochet, and here's my third. No chaining, just immediately go right into the next stitch, the next cluster in between those 2 clusters from the previous row with your yellow, and make another 3 double crochets. So as you build your way up, it'll get a little more, it'll get a lot easier to handle, a little stiffer so that your stitches aren't wrapping around your hook. I know that can be quite annoying when it's flipping around. So now I've done those 3 clusters there. I'm going to go ahead and go into my next cluster, which is right in between those 2 clusters, right before we get to the peak, and add 3 double crochets to this area here. So after we add these 3 double crochets, we're going back into our peak. So again, without chaining, just go directly into that stitch with 3 double crochets. That's 2, and this is 3, chain 2, and then add another 3 clusters, 3 double crochet clusters to that same space. So this is our peak. So we have to repeat what we did in the first row and make our 6 double crochets. Remember, you make 3 and then chain 2 and then make another 3. So that is our peak. That's what your peak should look like. So we're going to continue on from this peak. So after your peak, just go right in between those next 2 set of clusters with 3 double crochets. This is 2. And here's 3. So again, we're just repeating again, going into that next stitch and make another 3 double crochets, make another 3 clusters. 1, 2 and 3. So again, go right into that middle stitch there and make another 3 double crochets. And we're making our way back to the valley. So far we have our peak. Now we're stepping into the valley. So when you do the valley, it's the same thing. You're skipping a number of stitches. So instead, you're going to, right where I put my finger, you're going to skip that portion here and go into a double crochet, or 3 double crochets in the next cluster. So right next to that, in between, go ahead and make 3 double crochets, and we're skipping that space because we're making the valley portion of the ripple stitch. So we need for all of the stitches to be flowing downward. So I've made my 3, and I'm going to go right into the next, in between these next double crochet clusters, and make another 3 double crochets. We need to call them granny clusters because that's what they are. They are granny stitch clusters. So make this last one here. And then now we're going right in between again. We're heading right back into our peak. But let's do our last 3 clusters of double crochets here. Our granny square clusters. That's 2. And there's 3. So now we back to that peak again, right into that peak immediately with 3 double crochets. So I'm just showing you here what it should look like as you're making your way through. It should go up and back down and then begin making your way back up. So to get to that peak again, go ahead and put in 3 double crochets, chain 2 and another 3 double crochets. That's going to give us our peak for this ripple stitch. So this is number 3, chain 2 and add another 3 double crochets there. Another 3 double crochet cluster, granny cluster. We're going to call them granny clusters. And the last one, and continue to move on. So now we have our peak here. Again, I'm showing you how it's going up and down and that seesaw method. And there we go. So now we're back at the peak, and now we're going to continue on. So without chaining, go right in between those clusters again with that yellow and double crochet 3 times. Make your granny square cluster. Consists of 3 double crochets. So now we're making our way to the end again. Add another 3 double crochet cluster here, a granny square cluster. Add those 3 there. That's 1. This is 2. And 3. So we are almost at the end. Let's go ahead with our last 3 clusters here. There's 1, 2, and 3. And put your last double crochet cluster in there. So now we're at the end, and you're just going to put your final double crochet, 1 double crochet into these stitches in between. Don't put it in the chain stitch from the previous row. And voila, we have our final double crochet stitch here. So now we're going to go into our 3rd color, which is the white. So now we're going to do what we did before. Go ahead and pull up a loop, pull up your loop, and grab your other color. Put your hook through those 2 loops in the front, and go ahead and add your white yarn. Pull a loop through, and then go ahead and pull the yellow yarn out and chain 2. So now go ahead and turn your work. Remember to chain 3. Don't just chain 2. In this particular situation, you must chain 3. So chain 3 and turn your work. And now we're just going to continue like we did previously. We're going to skip that first section here, this first gap, and go right into the next in between those 2 yellow clusters with 3 double crochets. There's 1. This is 2 and 3. No chaining, just go right into those next set of clusters, right between those next set of clusters with another 3 double crochets. And just keep repeating this until you get closer to your peak. So another set of triple crochets, 3 double crochets, your granny cluster. And this is 3. Now you just immediately go right into that peak with 3 double crochets, chain 2, and another 3 double crochets into the same stitch. So that's pretty much how you do this granny square ripple stitch here. You just continue on. I only changed colors for every row just to show you how that works, but you can do 3-4 rows of the same color and then move on to your next color. It is completely up to you. So as just keep going, making your peaks and valleys. So now we're going down the side of the project, and you're just going to put your double crochet clusters, your granny square clusters, into right in between those other clusters from the previous row, and each of these clusters get 3 double crochet. So I'm going to keep making these clusters. Remember to make your 3 double crochet clusters in between each stitch, and I'm going to meet you right before we get to the valley portion. Okay, so we're back. I want to show you what this looks like. So we started over here at the end and made our way up to our peak. And so now we're going into the valley. But as you can see, it's just a repeat of the previous rows going in between each of those clusters. So now we're making our way back down to the valley where we're going to skip some stitches. Just like we did in the previous row, we're going to skip this space here and immediately begin making 3 double crochets into the next cluster. So skip that section there and move your hook over to the next clusters right between these 2 clusters here and make 3 double crochets. That's 2, and this is 3. So again, we're just repeating again, make some more clusters in between. We're going to move on, proceed to the next section and add our granny square cluster here, which is of course the 3 double crochets. Then immediately right into that next set of clusters in between. And as you can see, we're right back at that peak again. This is number 2, and here's the 3rd double crochet for that cluster. So immediately head right into that center and make your 3 double crochets. Chain 2, and then another set of 3 double crochets into that same space. And just keep making your way across in between each of the clusters with 3 double crochets. So I'm going to continue making these 3 double crochets, and I'm going to meet you when we get closer to the end. Remember, you're putting 3 double crochets in between each of the clusters from the previous row. Do not chain in between these clusters, and I'll be back. Okay, so now we are at the end, and per usual, we're going to go ahead and put a double crochet right in between those stitches, between that chain from the previous row and that last cluster. So here you have it. You have your granny square ripple stitch. It is an awesome stitch for a blanket. You can add some trimming if you want on the end. I am doing tutorials on some edging, so I will you can make your choice between the edging tutorials that I put up. So I want to thank you for watching this tutorial. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Cam's Handmade Crochet. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.